And as we begin hour 2 of America's Forum on this Tuesday, we've got our very own fearsome foursome right here, John.
That's right, JD. The reinforcements have arrived. With us here on the desk, Ed Berliner. Great to have you here, Ed.
Good to be here. Thank you, gentlemen.
And maybe a more familiar face, Nick Tate, New York Times best-selling author of the Obamacare Survival Guide.
Glad to be here.
Guys, great to have you here with us. Let's get to it. Let's talk about Obamacare. The deadline to enroll kind of, sort of, has come and gone. This as the administration is touting the enrollment numbers as a huge success, but Republicans are not buying it. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, an orthopedic surgeon by trade, went so far as to say that this administration is cooking the books when it comes to those enrollment numbers. Government officials say the health care overhaul is on track to sign up over 7 million Americans for insurance programs. So did the administration pull the president's signature piece of legislation from the brink of disaster? Well, that is the question we are going to try and answer here on this panel.
And Nick has been following this assiduously as a New York Times best-selling author with the Obamacare Survival Guide. Seems to me that we may be missing the big picture here. I mean, 7 million signups, even if that were true, in a country of 350 million people, what's the real story here?
Well, the truth is, even if you believe these numbers are true, 7 million, the White House is taking a kind of victory lap and saying there was a huge surge that reflects that there's interest in this law and interest in these programs, and holding it up as an example that it works. But the truth is that the real answer to the question of how is this program going to work is not going to be answered by just this number. As you say, it's a small percentage of Americans who actually need insurance in this country. 49 million don't have it. And when we drill down and look at what those numbers actually reveal, we'll need to answer 3 questions. How many of these people who are enrolled have actually paid for their premium or just simply put their name on a list? 2, how many of those folks did not have insurance before, which is the big test for Obamacare, or were they individuals whose policies were canceled because of other aspects of Obamacare? And critically, how many of those folks are in that under 35 range, where we really need the young, healthy people to shoulder the cost for older, sicker folks? So that number, everyone's talking about it, but it's really, we really are not at the finish line. We're really just at the starting line to determine whether this law works or doesn't.
Let me ask if you agree with what Goldman Sachs said, because they figured that it would be about 20% of the people who would not pay for their premium. Now that leaves us at under 5 million. That's about 4.7, 4.8 million. Do you agree with those numbers?
Well, that's the number that we're actually hearing from Kathleen Sebelius, too, that it's about 1 in 5, but we have no way of really knowing at this point, and I think it will be many more months before we do know. I think we're going to be closer to the next sign-up, which is in November, just 7 months away, before we really have the answer to that question.
But do you have any doubt whatsoever that even if we do hit that 20%, the administration will continue to take their victory lap? They put $700 million in marketing in this, in radio and television ads. They're on their victory lap right now. Even if they don't hit it, they're going to say, wait a minute, we said 7, we hit 7. Well, we can't tell you what happens after that. Well, so there still is that point.
There's no question. I mean, they kind of set the standard and they hit the standard if the numbers are to be believed. What's interesting to me, I think, is in 2012, the presidential election really was a referendum on health care. I believe, the economy and healthcare as well. I think it was a critical factor in why people re-elected President Obama. I think we might find in 2014 it's also going to be a referendum in these midterm elections on healthcare. But where 2012 was a referendum on the promise of the potential for healthcare reform, I think we might see this year it will be the reality of healthcare and what people are actually living with.
And Nick, there's another huge part of this story, and that was the initial drive to get people off their policies, to claim the policies were substandard, and then that change in midstream with almost an imperial edict from the White House to the insurance companies, keep these folks on their insurance. The punitive aspects of progressivism to punish people who already had policies, it seems to me that that is really going to drive the political dissatisfaction on into the midterms.
I think that's probably true. I mean, when you're in a situation where you're telling everybody you want to make them all happy, you have the likelihood that you will end up with no one being happy, whether you had an older policy that's grandfathered in or have to buy a newer policy. I think the real issue for most Americans is going to be, am I paying more for my health insurance now? Am I better off than I was before? And the answer to those 2 questions may decide how people vote and where the politics of Obamacare head.
Now, back to kind of what you were saying, Ed, here, we've been looking at these numbers here, and of course, Kathleen Sebelius has been asked by members of Congress to talk about how many people are paying paying, and also how many people who are signing up fit into that younger demographic that's so important. We just recently heard her, maybe this is part of the victory lap, I don't know, but she did a round of local TV news interviews, and she was talking about something called the Galifianakis bump, knowing the president who went on the Between Two Ferns show with Zach Galifianakis, the actor, also talking about people like LeBron James, who came out and supported the health care plan, really saying these young people brought folks out to register for the health care program. But when asked by members of Congress, she couldn't talk about demographics. So why is it only that we're getting these information when it seems to serve the administration?
That's a good question. You know, I think some of her numbers are actually coming from the Los Angeles Times, which broke down some of these numbers and didn't reveal where the sources of this information was. But there were about, a tally that I saw was about 100 celebrities, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, as you're talking, between two firms, and these kind of quirky approaches that were made on YouTube videos and people who would be known to very young folks to reach out and say, sign up if you break your arm skateboarding or you hurt yourself in playing, you know, pickup football or basketball. You really can be hurt if you don't have health insurance. But the latest numbers that we've seen are only about 1 in 4 of these new signups are in that critical under 35 age, and they needed to hit about a 40% to make the books balance.
Nick, it's interesting as you mentioned the Los Angeles Times, and Ed, you came in with the term victory lap. It seems to me, as one who has been on both sides of politics and the camera and journalism, that part of the effort to save Obamacare will be they're really trying hard, and oh, look at the president reaching out, and shouldn't we give him credit for that? That seems to be the underlying message of most of the traditional media outlets, to look at this with sympathy, even though it fails to be empathetic with so many Americans who obviously, by the opinion polls, are so highly dissatisfied with the state of Obamacare.
Well, as in both journalism and politics, there's perception and there's reality, and those two things are colliding with this issue. I do think, I mean, I would tell you that people that I talk to on the left tell me that what I've heard over and over again is, I think this president's heart is in the right place. I think he really wants to strive for things that are good for this country. And what I hear from people on the other side is absolutely, I don't agree with that at all. And I think that the proof is going to be kind of in the pudding. If this law helps more people than it hurts, then the Democrats will retain control of the Senate, and they may retain control of the White House. And if not, there could be big changes. I also think there's a change in the narrative on Obamacare that's happened over time, where at one time the proponents were very much, we're not going to change a thing, we're not going to touch it. And opponents said, let's get rid of this whole thing, repeal it, the problems are baked in the cake, we need to repeal it and start over. I think what we're starting to see from both sides is that there's a political benefit to saying, well, maybe there are some parts of this that we like, some goals of keeping people who have pre-existing conditions on insurance, expanding access to people who need insurance. And let's see if we can't figure out a way to fund those things in a way that makes sense, but yet get rid of the things that most people hate, the individual mandate, the employer mandate, and these new standards on health policies that are raising the costs on everyone. I think where that debate goes will be informed by how unhappy or happy people are with what they get.
So are we going to see Barack Obama kind of morph into Bill Clinton when it comes to Obamacare and say, mend it, don't end it?
Well, I think we're starting to hear some moves, maybe not by the president himself, although in his State of the Union address he did move in that Clintonian direction. But I think we are hearing it from Democrats who are in tough Senate races, and I think that's maybe more of the thing to watch than what the president himself says.
Yeah, not coming out and supporting the plan, but saying, fix it, in fact. Don't give us something else, fix it.
Well, there's another number here, and we've only got a short time here in this segment that I really wanted to get in here. WellPoint is one of the biggest insurers in the country. WellPoint's already come out and said that their rates are going up in 2015, substantially going up. This is just, to me, the tip of the iceberg that the administration does not want to discuss. That sure, here's your rates, here's your insurance, but it's going to go up. How then do the Republicans take advantage of that? How do the Democrats then deflect that?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that issue specifically coming up very soon here with Rick Unger, and what these insurance companies are going to do. Big question marks out there. Some of them offering teaser rates for this year to get people to sign up and get them in their plan.
Lock in.
And they will go ahead and tell you it's going to change, just like you said, it's going to change 2015. Kind of a sobering moment.
Very dangerous to tease people about their health care with rates or otherwise, yet in television we're involved in teases all the time. Nick, Ed, we thank you very much. Want to get your take on it? Why don't you tweet us at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum, and there's the old email, our address, connect@newsmaxtv.com.
Tonight we are a country